everyone. My name is Alisa Sosa. I am a research assistant working on the Dana Foundation Career Network in Neuroscience and Society. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Ishan Dasgupta, who is a member of the Dana Foundation and works as a program officer for the Dana Next Gen program. Mr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. We'd love to learn a bit about your role at the Dana Foundation, as well as a career path that led you here.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be happy to speak a little bit about that. So my role at the Dana Foundation is that I lead a program called Dana Next Gen, and the emphasis of our program is to foster more interdisciplinary training for future experts in neuroscience and society. So that might mean if you're a student in neuroscience to get more exposure to things like neuroethics or neuroscience and the law. It might also mean for, if you're a humanities or social science scholar to learn a little bit more about how the brain works so that your work can be more informed by the most current science going on. In terms of the career that led me into my current position, I guess the closest thing I could say would be as being an academic researcher in the field of bioethics. So when I was an undergrad, I was one of those students who really was really interested in both the sciences and the humanities. I remember early on, I came to undergrad wanting to be a pre-med, wanted to be a physician. A lot of people in my family are doctors, so that's sort of what I wanted to do. But once I got to college, I realized there were so many other interesting disciplines. And when I took my first philosophy course, I was just really fascinated by all these, ethical questions about what's right and wrong, particularly as they relate to technology. So when I took my first bioethics course, it kind of just clicked. And from then I just knew like, this is what I wanted to do. And there was a couple of different reasons for that, because I felt like, bioethics was really interesting to me because it was constantly evolving. There's constantly new technologies and new discoveries being made. So every 5 or 10 years, something else new is coming out. And it was my job as an ethicist to examine how to bring those technologies into society in a responsible way, in a way that really benefits the people it intends to help out. And I just really became interested in how to make that a career. And so for me, it was kind of a long and circuitous route to where I am right now. But eventually I decided to actually do a lot of research after my undergrad years. And that's maybe the career that really helped define in terms of what specific topics I wanted to go into. And actually working as a research assistant in bioethics gave me sort of the exposure for the first time to sort of neuroethics or neuroscience in society. And I think one of the reasons I was really interested in the brain in general was because it sort of defines who we are as people in a way that is maybe more profound than any other part of our bodies. And so, early on when I was doing research, I really became gravitated towards questions about, free will and philosophy and sort of how that philosophical concept might have some sort of impact on how we think about our brain and neuroscience. So yeah, maybe I'll stop there. So it was a little bit of a roundabout way, but that was kind of how I got introduced to the field.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know that a lot of students like myself will be able to sympathize with that. So in that line, I'd love to know what advice you would have for students that are pursuing careers in neuroscience and society.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think the advice that I give most people when they ask, how do I get a career started? Or, I'm interested in a lot of these different things, but I'm not really sure what the next steps are. And I think the first thing I would say is to be really flexible, because this field of neuroscience and society is a very new thing. Even fields like bioethics and neuroethics are very new disciplines. And so I think patience and flexibility are the number one thing if you're going to be successful in this career. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Because it's such a new field, there aren't always a lot of positions open. So it's up to you to sort of be creative, try to look for all different possibilities in terms of how to get involved. And that might not always be all in one place. Actually, I think actually part of the amazing part of having a career network in neuroscience and society is it kind of brings all those things from different places into at least one cohesive place. But oftentimes you'll see that, whether it's a job opportunity to do a research assistantship, whether it is a master's program, whether it's a short summer course, whether it's an opportunity to, get involved in some sort of public engagement, opportunity, they might be in different places. So I would say keep your eyes open, definitely talk to your mentors at your institution that you're at, try to attend events, but also just keep in mind, that there might be an opportunity that seems a little bit different than what you do now, right? It might seem, okay, like this is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. Maybe I'm studying law, but this is a research opportunity to say work with a neuroscientist. But having that openness and flexibility will, I think, go a long way in terms of helping you figure out, certain opportunities in that space. The other thing I would say is, and it might seem kind of counterintuitive to what I just said in terms of being flexible, is to also, while being flexible, not forget sort of what your core focus is. Because I think when you are talking about an interdisciplinary field like this, there is sort of this risk of like, I'm going to be someone who does a little bit of everything. And I think there is benefits to that, but I think in terms of making a sort of a successful career in this space, people are still going to want to make sure that you have some sort of home, right? So whether that's in philosophy, whether that's in neuroscience, whether that's in law, whether that's in medicine, it's also important to sort of focus on whatever your home discipline is. And I think one of the challenges there is each of these different disciplines have their own sets of rules, right? What it means to be successful in law might look very different from what it means to be successful in medicine. But part of your success as a neuroscience and society professional is going to be not only being able to be successful in your home discipline, but then once you complete that, to sort of work with others in the field to sort of establish what your whether research or practice is going to look like.
This is such great advice. I'd love to wrap up by asking what you consider to be the best aspects, but also the most challenging aspects of pursuing a career in neuroscience and society.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the best aspects for me, at least personally, are getting to meet really interesting people. I think part of the reason I loved even bioethics off the bat was because I got to talk to people who had different perspectives from me, different lived experiences, different analytical tools, different methodologies. But meeting people who are passionate about societal impact and changing the world in a positive way in some sense, regardless of where they're coming from, is an extremely sort of energizing and just an exciting feeling to be able to meet others, right? So my training is personally in law, but I love working with scientists, right? And I just love the idea that we can have relationships and sort of work together on common problems in a way that I think in many other professions or many other fields you don't get that opportunity. Most fields are unfortunately in silos where you're just working with other people like yourselves. And I think part of the issue there is that you can't see outside of your very insular field. And I think that's really exciting for me is again just getting to meet all these fantastic people and working together on a common goal. I think the flip side of that, and where it can be really challenging, is and particularly here I'm just leaning into my own experiences, is that when you are trying to do interdisciplinary work, it can often be very alienating. People in your home discipline are probably not going to always know what you're doing. They're not going to always want to appreciate what you're doing. And I can give an example of that. My training is in law. In law school, there are various law school things that you're supposed to do, right? There are things like law journals or moot court, things that are sort of specific to the practice and education of law. But as an interdisciplinary scholar, you might not be as interested in that. You might be interested in, say, doing again like research with a neuroscientist, or bioethics research or neuroethics research. And I think at times when you're in a professional space, it'll be difficult for your peers to really validate what you're doing because it doesn't fit into sort of the classic mold of what that discipline does. And so I think at times it can be challenging because you will not get sort of that recognition or even, have people understand quite what you're doing. I think for a long time, peers as well as, my parents would be like, what exactly are you doing? What exactly is neuroethics? We don't quite understand what it is. And I think, that can be at times alienating. So I think, another piece of advice here is that, try to find like-minded people, try to find other people who are interested in interdisciplinary work at the intersection of neuroscience, because they really will become really important in terms of like a social network for you. Because, at times when you do feel alienated, you'll have the opportunity to sort of go to them and sort of use that community to get a place of understanding.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your experience and this great advice. I know that our audience will find this like very helpful. I want to remind our audience that we have more interviews like this one available at neuroxcareers.org. Thank you so much for watching.